All right. So it's good to be here. This is my last Devo that I will do in succession of one another. I've been doing this since the middle of March, and so this is it's been an interesting trek that I didn't think was going to be this long. Going forward, we will probably do a Devo like this, even on the YouTube channel, probably on Wednesday mornings before school, or sometime on Wednesday or Sunday before, so that I can introduce what we're going to be talking about that night, which is what I want to do right now. I was notorious. I wanted to do 10 to 15-minute videos, and I started doing more like 15, 20, and then even sometimes 30-minute videos. So let's make this last one actually a little shorter that it should be, that I wanted it to be originally. First of all, we have youth group tonight, not virtual youth group, actual youth group, starting at 6 o'clock. We will be doing that for the next 2 Wednesdays. And then starting June 7th, we will be going to Sunday night youth group. And that's when the new kids can join us. So if you have friends that are going into junior high next year, theoretically, if there's school, then they can join us on June 7th. Will be whatever, new kid night or whatever we'll call it. Tonight we are grilling burgers, chips, soda, and Little Debbie's. Hopefully you'll come and enjoy some of that amazing food that will be grilled for you. And we'll be playing some volleyball. Alex has 4 songs that he wants to sing, so that's fantastic. And we will be talking through kind of the COVID thing. We're going back today. We're going back to the beginning of this thing. You know, our fears, our worries, because to some extent, the world is basically the same as it was back in mid-March. We don't have a whole lot more answers than we did back then. People are still afraid of COVID, and you may be afraid of COVID. And so we're going to talk about that tonight. So we're going to go to Psalm 62 right now and tonight. So if Brian's watching, go ahead and think of some things that you want to say tonight based off Psalm 62. But tonight during the lesson time, it's going to be a lot of interaction, a lot more conversation, talking to you guys about, some of the things that you miss, some of how life has been for you for the last couple of months. Because, I haven't seen you, you haven't seen me. We need to get reintroduced. I don't know. We need to get to know each other again, is what I'm trying to say. But Psalm 62, starting at verse 1, says, I wait quietly before God, for my victory comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress, where I will never be shaken. So many enemies against one man, all of them trying to kill me. To them I am just a broken down wall or a tottering fence. They plan to topple me from my high position. They delight in telling lies about me. They praise me to my face, but curse me in their hearts. Let all that I am wait quietly before God, for my hope is in him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress, where I will not be shaken. My victory and honor come from God alone. He is my refuge, a rock where no enemy can reach me. Oh, my people, trust in him at all times. Pour out your heart to him, for God is our refuge. We're going to stop at verse 8, because verse 9, it starts getting a little more, it takes a different turn. So, but yeah, no, these first 8 verses talk about how God is our refuge. He's our strength. He's our salvation. He is a fortress. He is a rock. Just repeating that over and over again. Refuge and rock, I think, are the more repeated ones, rock and refuge. And that is how he describes, or he sees God in this moment of weakness. When he is weak, and he describes his weakness in verse 3 by saying that he is a broken down wall or a tottering fence. And if you've ever seen a fence that is about to keel over, one that's, should have been replaced years ago, or maybe a stone wall is not as prevalent around here in Iowa. But if you've ever seen pictures of maybe stone walls, it's a wall, and then all of a sudden there's just this gap, where it's been broken down by somebody or weather or whatever. And the point of basically a fence that's about to fall over, or a wall with a hole in it, is it's worthless. It is not a defense. It is completely open, and anybody can go through. Animals, people, enemies, doesn't matter. Those things are meant to be a defense, but they are worthless. And so he says that to them, I'm just a broken down wall or a tottering fence. So he's basically saying that from his standpoint, he is weak and has no defense. He cannot defend himself, in fact, from his enemies. And that's where he's at right now. He's feeling very low, very vulnerable. Maybe that word is a key word for all of us, that at the moment, anything could take him down, is basically what he's saying. And there's a couple other key moments here in verse 1 where it says, I wait quietly before God, for my victory comes from him. And he repeats that in verse 5, let all that I am wait quietly before God, for my hope is in him. Hope and victory are kind of replaced there, so they're kind of similar. Not going to try to parse this out too much right now, because it's introducing this passage to you for those of you who are watching it before tonight's lesson. But basically, he says, I wait quietly for God because my victory is from him. Or, my victory comes from him, and my hope is in him. I wait quietly. Now, what's one thing that you should do if somebody's trying to attack you? Just sit around and do nothing? No. You build up the fence. You try to build up your defenses. You try to figure out a strategy to defeat the person or the enemy that's coming at you. David says, I wait quietly for God because my victory comes from him. Now, I don't want to say that the scientists who are working on antivirals or vaccines or medications to try to help people with this virus are doing bad things, because they're not. They're doing good things. They're doing great things. But David recognizes something very important, and that is, apart from God, victory is not going to happen, whether it's with like an army or with a virus. Our victory comes from God. Our hope is in God. And so David just sits, he says, I sit, wait, and I wait quietly. Now, I don't think it automatically means he just literally sat in a chair or sat down on the ground under a tree and just sat there and waited. It could mean that he is, while living his life, he's always looking over his shoulder, waiting for God to arrive. Like, he's busy doing stuff, but he knows that the thing that he's busy doing isn't really going to do anything. He's looking over and he's waiting for God. His hope isn't in himself. His hope isn't in building up a wall or a fence or coming up with a vaccine. His hope is always in God, and he's waiting for God to act. And that's a key thing. No matter how fast we spin our wheels, trying to fix the coronavirus or come up with ideas to fix our situation that we find ourselves in, we need to be waiting on God, because he is our hope and he is our victory. He brings the victory. And one of the last things, and the big thing about this passage, is it talks about God as being a refuge or a rock. Now, what do you think of when you think of or hear the word refuge? Now, some people, many women's battered shelters are called like women's refuge centers or whatever. And so basically, another word for refuge is safety. If you Google search the word, if you Google refuge and then you go to images, it's a lot of castles. Obviously, passages like this one are referenced in paintings and whatnot. So those pop up. You might see a lighthouse as a refuge. You might see, like I said, castles or whatever. But another one that I saw that I thought was awesome was a log cabin in the middle of a wintry forest. Cold, the sun's going down, and there you can see the smoke coming up because there's a nice fire, and the cabin is warm. In the middle of this cold place, there's one cabin that's warm. A refuge is a place of safety, a place that you go. And you can think of all those things like a lighthouse. Like if you're on a stormy sea, you're trying to find land to get safe. And there's the lighthouse. You go towards the lighthouse, you're going to get to land and be safe. If it's a women's battered shelter, then a woman has a husband or a boyfriend that's physically beating them. They're trying to find a place of safety. They can go there with their kids and stay, and they keep the husband or boyfriend away. They won't let them in there. It's a refuge. It's a safe place. And the author, David, of this psalm tells us that God is our safe place, our refuge, the place that we can go when we need to find dry land in the middle of a stormy sea, or we need to find warmth in the middle of a wintry forest, or a strong wall to protect us against an enemy force or army. Ultimately, we need to seek God in the middle of this coronavirus. I know we've come up with all kinds. Again, I've said this before. I'm very disappointed that there aren't more people in our leadership that are talking about, and maybe they are, and the media just doesn't report it, but I'm disappointed that more people aren't talking about seeking God. He is our refuge. He is our hope. He will be our victory, rather than stay at home or coming up with an antiviral or a vaccine or whatever. We're coming up with a cure, so to speak. I mean, there will never be a cure. A vaccine isn't technically a cure. It'll help for sure. And there's medications that help you get through the symptoms and the things that COVID does to you. But ultimately, viruses, they don't have a cure for the common cold. That thing's been around forever. So the weird thing is, everybody's talking about shelter at home, like your house is somehow the most safe place on the planet. It's not. God is our safe place. God is our refuge. And obviously, I'm going to post this on the Facebook page. Maybe Brian will post this on the Snapchat. Ultimately, I want to talk about that tonight, about how for the last 2 months, your life has been turned upside down, and there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel where society's sort of we're having youth group in person again, but it's still there are still lots of people who are afraid, people who are freaking out about this, and they need to know that the one place that they can go that's an actual refuge, an actual safe place to be, is in the arms of God, to be with God, to seek Him out for protection. And we're going to talk about a little bit more about that tonight, and what that looks like for you and I, and how we can as a church, as a youth group, to be also sort of a refuge, if you will, for people. Not that we ourselves are the refuge, but that when we talk about God, we can share God with other people, and hopefully others can find God's refuge through the youth group or through church. And that's one of the prime things that we should be doing. And we call that evangelism, but ultimately it's telling people, hey guys, are you hungry? Do you need safety? Seek God, and you'll find it. And so ultimately, in recap, we're like broken down walls. Trying to help ourselves is pathetic. Okay, ultimately, our true hope and our true victory and hope will come through God, and that's and ultimately looking for Him for help, not ourselves. And so tonight, I'd like to pick that conversation. I'd love to hear from you guys. Obviously, Brian and anybody else who's listening right now or watching this video, come up with some good stories about what happened to you for the last 2 months. Maybe there's some good God stories that you have, like we do in youth group on missions trips. We talk about God moments. Maybe there's been some God moments for you. Maybe there's been some things that have been happening over the last couple of months that you can't wait to share until we when we get back to youth group here, and you can share with the rest of us some of those amazing things that God has shown you. I know God has shown me some obscure but amazing Bible passages that many of them I've shared on the YouTube channel. But the Lord is good, He is our strength. He is our refuge. He is our hope. And I would love to hear how he has done that for you. And tonight. So hopefully see you there at 6. You can come sooner. I'll be there much sooner than 6 o'clock. So if you want to come and hang out a little bit, that would be fantastic as well. We'll be out at the shelter. So when you get there, just go straight to the shelter, and we'll be hanging out there and having youth group out there. So with that, we're at 15 minutes, and that's about right. It's been awesome. Like I said, this is not my last Devo time, but it will be the last one that I do in a succession. Like, I don't know when other than next Wednesday, I will for sure do one. Maybe I'll just throw one on here rando or whatever. I don't know. But see you tonight, guys, and stay classy.